and I'll make some final comments in relation to the work that we've done over the 5 years at the end of today's meeting. But for now, do we have any apologies?
No, Convener, there are no apologies submitted.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Any declarations of interest? No, none indicated. Okay, we will move to the item 3, which is the minute of the meeting of the Education, Children and Young People's Executive held on the 1st of February, pages 3 to 9. Are we happy to agree that as a true record? Agreed. Okay, thank you. Is there any matter particularly arising that anybody requires any feedback on in relation to that minute that's not contained within the agenda? No, no indications. Okay, thank you for that. Moving on to item 4, which is the rolling action log, pages 10 to 13, and I'll go to Mr. Moody.
Yes, thank you, Convener. The relevant updates are provided within the comments section in the rolling action log, but it's available for any member to ask questions on the items on the log.
Okay, thank you, Colin. Is there any questions related to the rolling action log? No. Okay, thank you, folks. We'll move into the presentation for this morning, and it's around the community mental health and wellbeing service, and we have a presentation by Gillian Campbell, and there's a report to follow. I intend just to take both of those items together. So once the presentation's over, and we will have a short follow-up from one of the officers, and then we'll open it up for questions. But I'll hand over to Gillian.
Good morning, everyone. Delighted to be able to speak to you today about our progress with the community mental health and wellbeing work. I'm just trying to work out how to share my PowerPoint presentation. So apologies, that might take a second. I'm not sure if I have the admin rights to share my presentation or not here. There must be more technical on the call. I can share my whole screen though. Okay, if I go into full slideshow mode, hopefully, can everybody see that?
Yes, we can see that now, Gillian. Thank you.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you. Sorry about that. Yes, thank you for allowing me to come and speak to you today about what I think is really important work. I've been in post since August, and it's a good opportunity to share with you now that we have a number of supports and services for young people in place. So just to begin with, we have a slide here that details what we mean. What we mean by tier 2 services. So if we think about mental health and wellbeing and the pathway for that, tier 1 we would talk about being universal services. So for us in education, we mean what's happening in schools, what the core provision is for everyone. As we move towards tiers 3 and 4, we're talking more about interventions, clinical interventions, and services like CAMHS and outpatient services, etc. So where I'm focusing this work, where the government funding is focusing, is this early intervention prevention work around tier 2. So just to give the overview of the face-to-face services that we have introduced, and I will talk about each one in a bit more detail. This slide's not moving on. Could try stopping sharing and going again. Okay, is this sharing now? It's not. It's not letting me move on to my next slide.
Gillian, I think Jack's going to come in with a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. That would be great.
Good morning, Gillian.
Good morning.
If you'd be kind enough to email me a copy of this presentation, what we'll do is I'll share the screen for you and you can talk through your material. And I wonder just to keep the meeting moving along, if in the meantime perhaps the officer who's presenting the report would just like to talk through that material, and then we'll return to your presentation in due course.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, in which case, Sarah, do you want to speak to the report, and then we'll return to the presentation?
Convener, it will be Rona.
Oh, sorry. Rona, apologies.
Not at all, not at all. Thank you, Convener. Good morning, everybody. And as Jill said, we're really pleased to bring this report to you to share the work of this recently established service. It's quite a brief report because, as you will soon enjoy, the detail is in Jill's presentation, and she, of course, is the person who's been leading this work. So just to take you through very briefly where we're getting set up, you have some background in 4.1. And as Jill said, she's been leading this work since August 2021, and the service has been established officially since November 2021. And this is telling you that the service is provided by funding which comes from the Scottish Government, and it's coping with children from ages 5 up to young people of 24, and of course if they're care experienced, it supports them continuously until they're 26. So if moving forward to section 5, it just gives a little bit more detail about exactly when the service was established and what we're aiming to do. So what we're aiming to do, if you look from point 5.2 and then through into 5.3 to 5.6, is trying to provide a range of face-to-face and online services that will be available to children and young people. And we're trying to make sure that for every age group as children move through school, and hopefully for early years too for families, that there is something that will be suitable and helpful to support the mental health and well-being excuse me, of our population. We're very keen that the services we have are known to our families, and I'll take you through a little bit later, as will Jill, how we're trying to make sure that people know about all that we have. You'll see from the detail that we're trying to make sure that we're coping with all kinds of mental health, and that how children will have a choice of how they want to access that support. There are anonymous, confidential, there are face-to-face supports, and there are online supported supports. And 5.3 to 5.6 take you through these, but I shan't spoil Jill's information coming up. In 5.6, we're talking here about a new one, which is Shout, and a part of this one is really important because this is open to all adults. Any citizen in Falkirk can use this. We're really keen to make sure that as we move forward, we're tracking and monitoring how these services are being accessed. We're tracking and monitoring where the referrals are coming from and what the age profile is of those people who are using these services. Because that's made specific for Shout service, we'll be doing the same for all of the other services that we've set up and the partnerships with Aberlour, with Barnados and with Falkirk Dam. And I think importantly, in 5.7, we're also talking about how we make sure that families are aware of the pathways, as Jill showed in that first slide. It's about that incremental up-levelling of service and support, and people knowing that there are different things they can do at different stages as an individual, as a family, without having going directly, as we once talked about, to CAMHS. So we're hoping here that we're starting a pathway of early intervention and support that can take young adults right the way through until they leave school and beyond for some, and that we have things in place to market and to make sure we've promoted all that's available to families, and that they understand the breadth and availability of the services that we have. You can see in 6.1 that we've had significant consultation with the partners we're working with, and that we continue to work alongside our national organisations, particularly the Children and Young People's Improvement Collaborative, to make sure that the service we're providing is the best that it can be. And lastly, to conclude, we're making sure that this format of support is going to meet the needs of those presenting issues in a timely fashion. And the ultimate aim is of ensuring children, young people and their families in Falkirk have equal access to the right support and, importantly, at the right time. So I hope that gives you a flavour of the technicalities behind the work that we're doing, and hopefully I can now hand over, thanks to Jack, to Jill to take you through the detail of what we're talking about in the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Rona, and I do think we are now in a position for Jack to assist, and if Gillian can just give Jack a prompt when you want to move on. I'll hand back to you, Gillian.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Jack, for the technical assistance. 2 years on and we're still having technical hiccups with these things. So yes, I think I've kind of explained where Tier 2 sits, and if we could go on to the next slide, please, Jack. I won't spend too long on this slide, but I just want to give the overview that we have now implemented 3 face-to-face services, new services for children and young people in Falkirk. Along with the government funding, the framework suggests 2 categories. We have a positive mental health and well-being, and we have what's called emotional distress. So in terms of supporting positive mental health and well-being and all the things listed there, body image, relationships, coping strategies, etc., we have 1 service that covers our full age group. This funding is covering age 5 through to 24 or 26 if care experienced, and that is delivered by our partners at Barnardo's. In terms of emotional distress, and it's that horrible list of afflictions on the right there: anxiety, self-harm, self-injury, substance misuse. We have 2 services because the way of supporting them for different ages, it can be quite different. So for the 5 to 12-year-old age group, we work with Aberlour, and our service just launched yesterday for that, so fresh, hot off the press. And with FIDAM, we covered the age 13 to 24-year-old age group, 26 if care experienced. So that's just the overview of the face-to-face services. And Jack, if you could move the slide on, please. We also have 3 online supports, recognising that people want to access support in different ways. And with the best will in the world, I think we could double funding, we could quadruple funding and workforce, and we would still be busy, such as the unfortunate position we're in the whole of the country with mental health and well-being. But in the meantime, we also have these online supports to kind of complement the face-to-face services. So we have Cooth, which supports age 10 to 18-year-olds, and Together All, which supports 6 to 26-year-olds. We're actually covering up to 26, whether care experienced or not, because it was easier for the company to give us that additionality. The two supports are quite similar. We felt that the Cooth was developmentally more appropriate for the younger age group, and it is more heavily moderated, and lots of safeguarding in place for that younger age group, and Together All for the slightly older, more adult facility. And again, I will talk about each of these individually, but Shout is a text-based service, completely anonymous, off bill, where SMS conversations with trained counsellors take place with clinical supervision to support, and that again has just launched at the beginning of March. Thank you, Jack. Next slide, please. So I think it's helpful just to give an overview. If I've thrown quite a lot of information there very quickly at you, just to show that by age group, ages along the top there, 5 to 24, bearing in mind that would be 26 of care experience, which supports are available for the specific age groups. Okay, thank you, Jack. So just a little bit individual information on the services to show how that they're different. Our first one launched back in November now. It was the first established and was very busy as a result of that. I think there has been a lot of support needed for a while around sort of what comes before CAMHS, and we were inundated with referrals for this new service, and we've been again getting lots of positive messages from people using the services and from from people referring into it from social work, education, GPs, speech and language, CAMHS themselves, that it's so nice to have services popping up to help and support the pathway. Again, this is the whole age group, although we are finding initially with this service that it does tend to be school-age children accessing this one. So supporting with the list of things that are mentioned there, we're trying to work as flexibly as possible. Most of it has been individual one-to-one support for children and young people, but they can work with groups, and that has happened in some school settings, and they can work with family groups as well. It says through digital platforms or face-to-face, but overwhelmingly people are wanting face-to-face supports. That's what's being requested and delivered. But again, we do have those other digital provisions there to support as well. And where possible, we are providing services out with the sort of school hours and weekends as required, recognising that not everybody needs support Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. But that's something I'll touch on as we go through. Thank you, Jack. With Aberlour, there was a couple of slight delays because of recruitment. So we went live yesterday with this, and again, a slightly different approach because of the younger age group. There's more support for parents involved with this. We have trained staff who will use approaches such as play therapy, art therapy, drawing therapy, nurture-based supports. Again, the staff are very well trained with people specialising in Sleep Scotland counselling, Seasons for Growth, which is a very well-established programme around bereavement or loss. So it can be for young people whose parents are going through separation or divorce, etc., as well as death. Individually, they work with families and they use parenting support programmes. Overwhelmingly, we are finding that stress and anxiety are the reasons that people are reaching out to our services so far. And one of the really nice approaches that Aberlour have taken is to use a befriender programme to support children, young people and families. They have a very nice term for it. They have been resting some volunteers over COVID who are befrienders, and they're now getting in touch with them and doing refresh training, and then they're going to start recruitment for new volunteers for that. So that's something when we met with the 3 face-to-face partners together last week, which we were going to be doing quite regularly, is that the others were really keen to see how this would work because it's seen as another good additional support for families. Thank you, Jack. FADAM, again, another partner well known in Falkirk, supporting our emotional distress service for 13 to 26-year-olds, launched 21st of February. Again, lots of one-to-one support from medical health practitioners. Very importantly, we do initial assessments to make sure that the referrals for our services are at the correct level. So we're not seeing things that should be covered by a universal approach, and we're not seeing things that are very much trauma-informed and should sit with the more intensive inputs from other services. We try to stick with the tell your story once so that people are not having to repeat information. And if we do, and I've got to say it's very rare occasion we get referrals that are not appropriate, we signpost them to other places. We don't want people feeling that they're not right for our service and they're just abandoned. We make sure that they're able to access the help and support that they require. So for example, with the Positive Mental Health and Wellbeing Service, if it's something around substance misuse, it might sit better with their signpost programme that they have at Bernardo's. So that seems to be working well, and I have to say the overwhelming majority of referrals are pitched at exactly the right level. And I think that's full credit to our partners for reading the information we sent out and making appropriate referrals. It's nice to see that with the 3 face-to-face services, referrals are coming from across different partners. A lot from education, as you'd expect, as a core service for 5 to 18-year-olds. But I think 20 different GPs now from across Falkirk have referred into services. 10 social workers, etc. And yeah, speech and language, CAMHS, everybody is aware of the services and starting to refer in. Again, I'll not repeat myself, but flexibility and how we cover appointments, etc. Thanks, Jack. Again, a lot of the information's here on the screen already. COOTH is our 10 to 18-year-old programme. Again, we selected this in addition to Together All because it is developmentally more appropriate for 10 to 18-year-olds. Everything, absolutely everything on this online support is pre-moderated. So children can't just post unhelpful advice to other peers. They can't have private conversations with other individuals of the peer group. So they can access live counselling, and we have shared this information heavily with parents through our schools. But everything is pre-moderated and supported by mental health professionals. Thanks. So that went live on the 1st of March. So we're looking forward to in the next couple of weeks having our catch-up meeting with COOTH to see what the referrals have been like for this. I think really importantly with the online services, we need to start and capture when people are asking for support, because it isn't just the 9 to 5 that we talked about earlier. So making sure we have a range of different platforms available to offer support, and we're looking at the information that we get from that. Thanks, Jack. Again, the online support Together All for 16 to 26-year-olds. What I like about this is that it's now offered across the whole health board area. So CLACS and Stirling also offer Together All as well, and that for health colleagues, etc., who work across the 3 authorities, that's quite helpful to be able to refer to one service across the 3. Again, no registration required, so it is confidential, anonymous, but again, really good medical professionals supporting this work. A lot of self-help programs, etc., built into this. But again, we have safeguarding so that if people display worrying behaviour or comments on it, that they can access crisis support through that. So we have spoken with emergency service colleagues, etc., to make sure everybody's in the loop and what's available. And that includes me speaking to a lot of groups of healthcare staff, etc., to update them on what's there and available through our new services. Thanks, Jack. Our final service that I'm going to focus in on today is Shout, which we added again at the start of March. It is a completely anonymous off-bill service by text message. If you're old enough to use a phone or you're able to use a phone, you can access the support. They say the youngest person they've supported in this way is a 7-year-old. And during COVID, I think a 94-year-old was the older, the top end of the age group that accessed this help. This service, again, gives us really good information, because although if you look across mental health services, most things are 9 to 5, unfortunately. And now with ours, quite often the only support available is to present an accident and emergency, which is not ideal, and a lot of people don't think of that as a place to go to support their mental health. Of course, they would be well looked after. So with this service, we will be able to track and monitor what times of day and days of the week people are accessing help. And again, we're getting lots of rich data from across the 6 services, and we are pulling these together, and we'll be starting to offer quarterly reports on the information that we're getting back. So again, watching with interest. Very important to me that we have equal access across all parts of our community. So we gather information, not names, but we gather SIMD, we gather gender, presenting issues, etc. So we're starting to really build a picture of what the need is in Falkirk and how we can best support that and tweak things going forward. Thanks, Jack. Just for information, we are not ignoring Tier 1. We have a pilot going on at the moment for primary schools using MindMoose. There is a lot of stress and anxiety in the system at the moment, and this is a programme that works with 7 to 11-year-olds predominantly, although it can go slightly lower or older in age group as well. It's been piloted across 7 schools at the moment, across that sort of age group. Most of the focus is around emotional resilience and building up those skills. The other thing we like about it is that it can be accessed by parents as well, so that we are having a consistent message. It's worked on in school, but it can also be accessed at home. So again, we have that consistency. We are not pushing schools too much. We did do the training event on the 13th of January, but following the Easter holidays, we're going to get some information back on this pilot from them and start to build a picture of this, if this is a good intervention, whether it should be more widely available. But again, it's been quite a tricky tricky term in schools, so we've given them a little bit of additional time to use the resource and give us feedback. Thank you, Jack. Last slide, I think. You can imagine with 6 services and the kind of financial procurement and data protection, all the considerations that need to go in place when launching a new service, contracts, etc. We have been very, very busy, and it feels like we're in a really good place now, and we're starting to get positive messages back that it is good that there are more supports available, but we have a lot still to do as well. And for me, these are the sort of priorities for the next few months, looking at, are there still gaps? Are there still areas we need to do more? Continue to engage with children, young people, parents, families, and our key partners as well. We will monitor and evaluate all that rich data that's coming in, and that will feed into our service design work that we're currently doing with Health Improvement Scotland and CIPIC, the Children and Young Persons Improvement Collaborative, so that we are designing the services that are required. We will continue to develop the workforce. We have training opportunities coming up in Decider Skills, which is around emotional regulation, and that Seasons for Growth programme that I talked about earlier. Making sure that we're making the universal curriculum provision through schools and nurseries as strong as we can. We are continuing to market and communicate what we are doing so that people know the services. There's no point in spending lots of money on services if people don't know they're there. My car is full of posters and leaflets and business cards to share, because while we have the captive audience in schools, the 18 to 26-year-old, which we know are a group more at risk of suicide, we need to get to the places they go. And obviously online is one platform for communicating our messages, but we also are delivering posters, etc., to GP surgeries, gyms. Social work colleagues have copies of the physical resources as well. So we're going a little bit old school with some of this, just trying to make sure we get our reach as far as possible. We are doing a mapping exercise to look at everything that's available for mental health and wellbeing across all the services. We have done it from our point of view, what we think is there, and we're just in the process of checking that with our health partners and third sector, etc. We have a strong programme of counselling in schools and secondary, along with some primary provision, but we're going to look at strengthening the counselling provision for 10 to 12-year-olds and looking at what the facility will be available to cover the summer holidays when schools are closed. We are also looking at a number of pilots, again, when we're starting to identify gaps, and look at some small tests of change with colleagues in health, again, to look at that sort of CAMHS waiting list and how we can reduce pressure on that service. So it's been a busy few months, and it's going to be another busy few months going forward. But again, I think we're at a really exciting place where we have services, and we need to look at, is this what we need, and how we tweak things going forward. Thank you, Jack. I think that should be the last slide. Thank you. I feel I rushed through that to catch up on time. So if there are any questions, please.
Gillian, don't worry about that. I think that was hugely informative and really helpful, and thank you for taking us through that. I'm going to just go to Rona if she's got any final words before I open it up for members.
Thank you, Convener. I won't take up time, but I would like to just reinforce the commitment we have to moving forward and to evaluate, even at this early stage of some of these services, where our referrals are coming from, where the clusters of interest are, how people are accessing, as Jill quite rightly said, when, because this is a 24-hour issue, it doesn't just restrict itself to our working hours. And I would also like to publicly thank Jill for taking on this work. And as you'll have seen from that presentation, the extensive work that's been done with our partners across Forth Valley in health, in social work, and in the third sector has been outstanding. So I'm pleased that I'm sure you'll have lots of questions for Jill, and she's by far the best placed person to answer them. But I would like to publicly thank you, Jill, for the work that you've taken forward on behalf of our service.
Thank you, Rona. I've got a number of hands up, but I'll bring in Councillor Colley as a portfolio holder first, then Councillor McHugh, Michael Rollo, and we have Charlotte and Cameron who are going to make a comment as well. But I'll take them in that order. Fiona?
Thank you. I think just to say a few words, I mean, I think I'm so delighted to hear of the services that are developing and that are so comprehensive in supporting the mental health services in schools, in the community and in CAMHS. But I think preventing
Sorry to interrupt you, Fiona, but we're losing you a bit. We're not hearing you terribly well.
Can you hear me now?
That's a bit better, yeah.
I'll turn the computer around a bit and see if it's just my direction. Yeah, so I think just in general to say that I think that wide range of services and working with our partners in the third sector and in the NHS to be able to offer that range to prevent crisis, to prevent people, to prevent children and young people from needing the CAMHS service, and we know that the delays that are in the system in relation to the CAMHS service, and to be frank, we don't want children and young people to be waiting to get to that stage of needing more intensive support. So I'm so delighted to see these services develop and that wide range, include face to face, but also digital. And I think sometimes people initially may prefer to have that digital discussion rather than having a face to face discussion. And equally in supporting parents, in supporting the mental health and emotional well-being of their children. I think the pandemic, I think we all know it's had a significant impact on the mental health of children and young people. And with my other hat on, and I know that for young carers, for example, there's been really significant impacts on their mental health and worrying about the person in their family who may have a health condition, and that builds emotional distress. And I think having options to be able to talk about these things and to be supported, I think is just fantastic. So I think the communication, and I think you made the point, Gillian, about getting the word out, and the most important thing is that people know that these services are available, and I think to be able to share that information with elected members, because again we would want to share that information as widely as possible to let our communities know. So I think just a big well done, and I look forward to hearing more as even more develops. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fiona. Councillor McHugh.
Thanks, convener, and thank you, Jill. This has been an incredible piece of work, and I definitely want to second this report and welcome the service. I think initially when we were given the money from the Scottish Government and we were looking at setting up the new service, it was very important at the time to take the time to get it right, to draw on the expertise that we have within our council and others out with in the third sector. So I thank you this morning that the incredible amount of work that's been done, and we've finally got the services launched, and they look amazing. They look different from anything I've seen in the past, and I hope that they'll make the huge difference that we need. Obviously, we're all aware of the pressures that our young people have been under over the last couple of years, but mental health within our young people has been an ongoing issue for really quite some time now. So I really welcome the fact that this service has been put in place, that we've really dug in and looked at the different age groups, the different natures of mental health and well-being, and provided services right across, face to face, digital, whatever way that we can reach the young people. And as Councillor Coley, my colleague, says, it's really important that we now get that service out there so people know that there is help there for them. And I'd appreciate if we could be sent the packs of information as well as the councillors and the business cards, because often, when we're out and about doing our work, then we could be passing out that information to families. But I appreciate really everything that's been done under the extreme pressures that everyone's been under, and I hope that this service will go a long way to supporting and helping our children, our young people and their families, because it's been much needed, and I welcome it. Thank you, Jill, and thanks everyone in the team that have been working hard on this. And I just want to add that I'm really pleased that we will be monitoring this service as it goes forward, and we'll be able to, change and tweak things and possibly extend things as our families and our young people come forward for the support and the helps that they need. Because intervention is far, far better than having to deal with someone that's struggling because they've not been helped when they really needed it. So thanks again.
Okay, thank you, Adana. Michael?
Thank you, convener, and thank you very much for your reports. I just wondered if there's been any contact through the school chaplains with a view to using school chaplains in relation to well-being and positive mental health. I know that, for example, that I'm a football chaplain, and it's Thinnasmuir Football Club, and all the football chaplains in Scotland have gone through mental health training with the SFA and with their own organisations. And so in the football community up and down the length and breadth of Scotland, football chaplains would be recognised as a resource for mental health. And I was a school chaplain for over 20 years, and there's different things we used to do, like have drop-in thing, lunchtime opportunities for young people to come and to listen and share. We helped out at lunchtime and doing things alongside the staff, just sitting with the pupils, chatting, building relationships. And I know a lot of that's been hampered because of COVID, and I don't know that the school chaplains have actually been invited back into schools since COVID. But it is a free resource. I know that Larbert Churches Youth Trust have youth workers in schools. For example, there's a couple in Larbert High, and I know that some of them are currently doing training. I know that as a local church, we put on, we use a psychologist, and he did mental health training for us as church. We gave that opportunity. We paid for him to come and did 3 Saturday training. We put that online as a resource for our people, our community, right at the very start of lockdown, recognising that would be a real problem for people. And then last year we took people through this wellbeing course, which we did in our life groups, which looks at a wellbeing mindset, physical wellbeing, emotional, spiritual, which is often overlooked, and financial and vocational. And so there's a lot of resources out there, is basically what I'm saying. There's a lot of school chaplains, not all of them, but a lot of school chaplains would be trained in many of these things. That I've personally done the trauma healing stuff through Scottish Bible Society. So a lot of stuff out there that people have gone through at their own expense, and they're willing to utilise that, make that the resources available. So it's just to say that I think there's a resource sitting on our doorsteps that could be added to the excellent work that's already been done, and just wonder what consideration and work had been done to involve the school chaplains. Thank you for listening to that long story there.
Thank you, Michael. Gillian, an offer of help and support?
Oh, sorry, I couldn't unmute myself there. Thank you very much for those comments. Yes, and as somebody who's been involved in football for a great number of years, I've seen the great value that the chaplaincy team adds to clubs, and that sort of mental and emotional well-being support, and within schools as well. So yes, that's something I'm interested in having more of a look at. As I say, as this summer term, we are going to shift the focus a little bit more to what's happening through our core provisions, and yeah, I'd like to investigate further how we can make best use of the chaplaincy teams that are there. And as you say, it's been a little bit tricky with other adults going in and out of schools, but as things are starting to open up, I think that would be a really good support for schools to have. And as I say, I've seen firsthand the great job that can provide. So yeah, thank you for those comments. I'm going to add that to my list of considerations for schools.
Thank you, Gillian. I don't know, I've got Charlotte and Cameron. I'm not sure who's wanting to.
Hello, thank you so much for having us again. We just wanted to bring our opinion as young people on the mental health support. Plan looks really good. I think the tier systems and the early interventions will be very positive for people, because I know from being around school there are a lot of people that are struggling, and that early intervention for like a significant proportion of them would be enough to prevent them from getting further down the track, and then it's obviously much harder to treat, whereas if you can address it when it's much more minor, then you don't escalate. It's a lot easier to come back from. I think what I was thinking that was very important is that all your support is very well advertised throughout the schools and to parents, and so all teachers, parents and kids are on all the same page, so everyone knows where to get the support. Because at the minute sometimes it's not very clear how you get to the support. It's not that the support isn't always there, it's just people aren't sure how to access it, and I know certainly some of my teachers aren't as confident in knowing where to turn to. I think a family approach is definitely helpful, because when you live with someone you want them to do well, but it's important to recognise the wider impact that someone with poor mental health has on the rest of the people that care about them, because it obviously has a significant sort of ripple effect. But the plan looks really good, and the variety of services I think is important, because some people might prefer to be anonymous, others might feel that they need that in-person support.
Thank you, Charlotte. I think that feedback's been really, really important. I think Gillian, it helps her to be able to target where she needs to put more resources in to make sure that that information is getting out. So thank you very much for that. It's appreciated. I have a number of hands up now. I have John Chalmers, Councillor Nimmo, and then Karen Prochek. John?
Hi, thanks. I think it's already just been mentioned by the young people just before me, though, that I think this service is obviously going to be useful as it's rolled out and pushed forward. But I think the big important thing is that schools realise that these services are here, and obviously then teachers are able to implement that. And it's about supporting our teachers to support our young people and making sure that these are all joined up, because at the end of the day, our teachers and us as a school support our local community, our community within the school, supporting the parents who can have difficult times. It's important that we realise that these services are here, rather than going always straight to CAMHS. There is certain places that we can then work up to, but I think it's really important that the next stage that you make sure that all schools are aware, teachers are aware, so that they can then implement it. And just to say also that the Mind Moose seems to be going quite well, because we're one of the pilot schools here, so it seems to be going well. But obviously it's been disrupted a little bit with different things going on with staff and things like that. But I think it's an important step. But just make sure that schools, teachers and young people are all aware of these things that are there for them. So I think that's an important next step.
Okay, thanks, John. Again, important feedback, particularly as one of the pilot schools. Okay, I've got Councillor No.
Thanks very much, Convener. We welcome this report as well, and we really hope that this service has the impact that it's intended. If I could just draw your attention to the conclusions on page 32. 8.1 mentions the monitoring that's going to be carried out regarding this and the evaluation of the service. I'm just wondering, how are we going to measure the benefits of this service, and how is it going to be reported back? Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nimmo. I'll go to Rona. Do you want to give a wee bit of information, or perhaps Gillian? I don't know who's best placed to answer that one.
Well, I'll start and then I'll graciously hand over to Gillian. But I think, as I said, Councillor Nimmo, we are really committed to making sure we're doing the best that we can. And that, as people have said, we're trying to get these supports to the right people at the right time. And one of the best bits about our evaluative approach is if we're finding that we're investing in something that maybe isn't doing the job we wanted it to, do we have to look elsewhere for something a bit better? And also, as Gillian talked about in her presentation, we're wanting to make really sure that we know where the usage is. Now, Jill already said that for one of the services, predominantly it's been school-aged children. For the text-based services, that's there so that people can access out with working hours, because we knew that during the pandemic, from our health colleagues and other partners we're working with, a number of referrals and requests for help came in after 10 o'clock in the evening. So it's trying to make sure that we know where the sources of access are coming from and that the supports that we're giving are doing the right thing. So as Jill detailed, there will be a monitoring of those who are using the service. We'll be getting feedback from those who are using the services. We'll be getting information about how often they're being used. And that way we'll know that we're doing the right thing. Jill, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just a little bit. Yeah, we are being very strong with all our partners on the monitoring that we require and evaluation, because this is informing our service design. And while these contracts at the moment are year to year based on how we're funded, there is the potential towards the end of this year that the Scottish Government will confirm multi-year funding. So we really need to know what the picture is. So we're not just asking for monitoring based on what we are asked to provide the Scottish Government. We've asked for far more. And each service has pre and post questionnaires, and we're asking for feedback on people on whether their mental health has improved as a result of their journey with the particular service. So I think it will be really interesting as the data starts to come in from all of these services. We are getting some early signs, things like gender is slightly more females than males accessing. But not quite as stark as the sort of national figures requiring help for mental health services. We're looking at a really good spread at the moment across different socio-economic status, SIMD. So again, really closely monitor these things to make sure everybody has equal access to services. And as Charlotte very rightly picked up on, communication is really key in doing that to make sure everybody is aware of what's there, whether they have online access or not. So yes, I'm confident that we're doing a good job around monitoring and like I say, robust plans for evaluation in place as well. And come June time, we'll have a quarterly report that will detail the numbers coming back from all 6 services to share with all key partners, including yourselves as elected members, to let you know the progress of what's in place now.
Thanks, Gillian.
Thank you. We've still got a number of hands up, so hopefully we'll get through those fairly swiftly. But I've got Karen Procheck, then Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Gillian. I'm one of the parent reps, so it's fantastic to hear of all these services. But kind of leading on with that theme that's been discussed about communication, how do parents find out about this? Because already I'm like, oh, I need to tell my friend about that for their child. I kind of felt that a lot of the presentation, the emphasis was on the work with your partner, so education, health, speech and language. But I'm thinking education could be the cause of many mental health issues, so that might not be a positive referral. So I know you're at the very early stages, but again, it's how do parents navigate this without going through the schools, you know? And the other hat that I have is as a parent to a child with additional support needs. And I was wondering, is there targeted intervention towards the ASN community? Because again, I think it's fantastic that we have these services, but what if you have a young person that can't work a mobile phone to access various different things? So I was just interested to know what links were being made with the specialist provisions around promoting this service. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Karen. Gillian.
Yes, thank you very much. Some really good comments there as well, and certainly things that are on my radar. We have shared information through schools to go to parents, and absolutely parents can refer directly into all our services and don't need to go through the school, although they are a good vessel for us communicating messages. We have, I can't believe I've got to this stage in my presentation and not mentioned her by name, but Christy McAlpine, the graduate intern who's working with us on social media marketing and communications, has done a great job of building up social media accounts and sharing through that, and it seems to be having quite a wide reach. We also have developed a site, and because of the launch of the final service yesterday, we're going to start really pushing that, and there will be a service finder on that, so parents can go in and look at sort of accessing, clicking on buttons to say, well, I'd prefer a face-to-face support. My child or young person is this age, etc., so that they're channeled to a service that we think would best suit their needs, rather than having to read through all the information. We're currently working with somebody from the Falkirk Connected team on accessibility to make sure that our site looks and feels the way it needs to communicate the messages. So there's lots going on, and yes, certainly around additional support needs, we work closely. I've been working with the schools and the bases to have discussions on what is required, and certainly for the Counselling in Schools programme, that's something we've looked at. Are there any barriers to children and young people accessing, including conversations with Windsor Park about counsellors that can sign, etc. I think I probably have to do a little bit more thinking and discussion around the online access and things like that for children if they struggle with digital devices. So that's another good point that I'll make a note of. But yes, like I say, more conversations to be had, but certainly accessibility is really, really important. And we don't, I think, have any barriers with our face-to-face services, but the digital supports, yeah, that is something I need to look into a little bit more. But thank you, some really good comments there.
Okay, thank you. I have still a number of hands up, but I'm aware of time, and I appreciate it's a very, very important service. So if people could be quite succinct and be clear with their questions. I've got Councillor Kerr, Councillor Coombs and Councillor Bissett.
I'll be very brief, Convener. I'd just like to thank Gillian for her presentation and Rona for the report. Like everyone else, I wished we didn't need these services and the children and young people didn't need to require these services, but fortunately we do and we have them. And as most people know, the council can't deliver these services themselves, so the partners that we've got are key to this. And Fadam, Aberlour and Bernardo's, until you've had the opportunity to use these services, you don't understand how much importance there is. But as Gillian says, to deliver these services, hopefully the funding will be there in the years to come. One of the questions I had, and Gillian kind of answered that, and so did Rona, regarding no all children have the worries at school times. So during holidays, night times, weekends, are these all covered in the services that we've got?
Okay, Gillian.
Yes, absolutely. Our face-to-face partners, the majority of the work is done 9 to 5. However, they are quite flexible and offer sort of evening programs and weekends as required. The online services are available all the time. We're also looking, and I suppose touches on some of the stuff raised by Karen a second ago, parenting programs to support as well, because parental mental health, if you're supporting a young person who's struggling, that really can be difficult for your own mental health and well-being. So these sort of things, we have groups in the evenings that are about to launch as well. So there is a lot happening, and I'm very clear that we need to look at that whole pathway and what's provided out with office hours. But yeah, absolutely, I'm with you. It would be great if we didn't need these services, but we do. And when you sit down, I sat with the Bint Marlow staff a couple of weeks ago, and you hear the positive impact when they share a story of how they've made a difference to one young person, and you can see that the weight of anxiety lifting on the parents as well. You see how important this work is. So yeah, thank you for your comments, and hopefully I've covered that around this sort of out of hour service.
Yeah, thanks, Gillian. Final, just a comment. Glad to see Shouts started. I know it's the early stages, and I look forward to hearing how it progresses and develops in the future. Thanks, Convener. Thanks, Gillian.
Thank you, James. I'm going to take the final three colleagues that have got their hands up together, and then go back to the service, and then I think we really need to move on with our agenda this morning. So I've got Councillor Coombs, Councillor Bissett and Councillor Munro. Take them in that order, then I'll go back to officers, and that will be the final speakers. Councillor Coombs.
Thanks, Convener. Karen Pritchett touched on the points that I was going to raise, and it was mainly about that school might be the issue. And my question is very straightforward. Do we have enough intervention measures in place for the young people who aren't going to school for the various reasons that we've talked about? So if they've already excluded themselves from the education service and from therefore anything that we're doing in schools, how are we reaching the unreachable, basically?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Coombs. Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, Convener. Certainly welcome this report, and I'd like to thank Gillian and Rona for it. Mental health well-being is a big factor these days for everybody. The stress and pressures that are on young people is unbelievable, and every opportunity they can get to have a chat, and perhaps, as Charlotte said, early intervention so it doesn't become a long-term life problem. I think that the cooperation between different services has been crucial to get this to this stage, and it was worthwhile taking the time to put the thought into it to get a good service. And this looks like to me like we've covered all bases, and I certainly would take on board the point that Pastor Rollo raises, that the churches have a good position there for people to have a chat and counselling and just generally provide that support. That's always been there, so I certainly would think we should take that up. I just wanted to ask about the numbers. Do we have an idea on the numbers that are coming forward that need support? Perhaps numbers from the past, just to get an idea how many people are coming forward for support. I think as Councillor Nimmo asked it, how do we kind of measure the effectiveness? We're going to ask people, how have you felt that's helped your life, and has it helped you move forward? And also, just I wanted to ask a bit about the funding. Will the funding be ongoing, and will it be baselined into the council's budget? Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bissett. Councillor Munro.
Thank you, Convener. I think it's very clear that we have a crisis in terms of the mental health issues, but I read recently that the World Health Organization has made clear that children are 55% less likely to suffer mental health issues if they spend a great deal of their time outdoors in outdoor learning. And I wondered how much of a role this is going to play in our schools in the future, because clearly if that provides a solution and results in children being much less likely to suffer from mental health issues if they spend a great deal more time in the outdoors, then it's something we ought to be doing, as well as having the safety net proposals we're talking about today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Gillian, I'll come to you to answer what you can first.
Absolutely, thank you. Some really good questions there. The first one I picked up on was around interventions around non-attendance, and it is something we're seeing more of. I think I commented that the main topics that we're getting referrals for are stress and anxiety, but it can be to such a crippling stage that people don't, the young people don't feel that they can go to school. So we have a number of referrals around that, and I heard a really nice first-hand story about a worker working with a family with a young girl who wouldn't even come and engage with the worker the first week, wouldn't come down the stairs. By week 2, was downstairs, hoodie down and making eye contact. They went out a walk in the local community, and then by 3rd week, they managed to do a visit into school. So I'm hearing stories about how they're working with young people to address that. And you can imagine that the strain on those parents as well. All our services, all the 3 face-to-face services can support with that and do it in different ways. I mentioned the befriender service, and often it's about building sort of confidence to get out of the house and into the community even, and I guess that relates as well a little bit to the outdoor learning comment at the end there. So the befriender service can also have an impact on that, as well as our specialist mental health workers that we have aligned to the programmes. So yes, I'm confident that all 3 services are working with children and young people in that position. It's been picked up on a lot. It's important for us to share and make sure parents know that these services are there. They don't need to go through the school at all, and we're getting a lot of referrals directly from parents and some from young people themselves. So yeah, hopefully I've covered that. The church was raised again, and it is a hugely important part of community life. And some of the young people we spoke to during our engagement activities for the new service design work have said that they feel they get most of their mental health support from the church and the church groups. So absolutely a really key partner in all this work, and we are working really, really closely with partners. So more conversations to be had, but thank you for those comments. In terms of numbers, we are getting big numbers through. The Positive Mental Health and Wellbeing Service launched in November. It was first, and because it was first, it got really busy really quickly. But all 3 services now have a good number of referrals. 2 of the services have waiting lists, although they're quickly reducing. It's really important to us that people get support quickly. We know that CAMHS still have waiting times, and that hopefully that is being addressed in a lot of different ways, but important that people, even if we can't see a worker right away from us, they're getting really good information on, here the online support's available. Here's a few suggestions to keep you going. Sometimes it's early intervention work. It can be a phone call with one of the workers rather than needing 6 support sessions. A young person wasn't eating properly, and Bernardo's were able to talk on the phone with them and suggest some ways to the parent of starting to introduce foods, and that had an impact. We got a positive email back saying this is already working for my child and young person, and it's been a great success. So not everything requires 6 weeks of input with a face-to-face service, and that's that flexibility we were talking about. Outdoor learning, yeah, it's such a key way of improving people's well-being. We all know how nice it is when we've had this glorious weather this week to get out and enjoy outdoors, and we're seeing more therapies, like lots more people engaging in open water swimming and cold water therapies. I've heard forest bathing's becoming a well-being technique that a lot of people are engaging with. So absolutely, and I think in Falkirk we are blessed. I have a colleague, Jane Jackson, who does a lot of work around outdoor learning, and it's really prominent in our schools, and I think it's something we need to make use of. And we really did a lot of work and support for outdoor learning, particularly during the early stages of COVID, where it was important to try and use the outdoors and get the most from that while we had that good weather. So yes, absolutely take on that point, and it is definitely in our thoughts. Hopefully I've picked up on all the comments there. Somebody asked about funding as well. It's year-to-year funding at the moment, and I believe at the end of this year they are hoping to confirm multi-year funding, and that would be a benefit, I think, to get some consistency, that the services aren't 1 year and then it's stopping something different. We can hopefully get things in place slightly longer term based on the information we've pulled together.
Gillian, thank you very much for that. You did very well rattling through all those questions there, and I think you managed to get them all, which was fantastic. All it requires now is for me to get agreement from the committee. We're happy to accept the report and wish the Wellbeing Service all the very best and going forward, and look forward to seeing it evolve and seeing the fruits of its labours and helping support our young people to become far more resilient and taking us through such a difficult period of time and allowing them to go on to achieve all that they can be. So are we happy to agree the report? Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, thanks Gillian for coming along today. Okay, colleagues, we've spent a lot of time on the community mental health and wellbeing service, and I think rightly so. It is hugely important. However, we do have a number of other items on the agenda today, so I would ask people to be fairly brief in their comments, and we can take maybe some of it as read as we go through. But item 7 is the establishment of an information rights team, and I think we have Karen Algie with us today. Sorry, so Wendy's going to take it. Okay, Wendy's with us, and so I'll hand over to Wendy to speak to the report. Thank you.
Thanks, convener. Good morning, everybody. It's a treat for me to be here because I don't get to be here very often, and I'm here today to ask the executive to approve the creation of 2 permanent posts within my information governance team. So in terms of the council's recruitment and selection policy, when we're adding posts to the establishment, anything over 2 years has to come to executive. So that's my ask today. But it's also a really useful opportunity, I think, to highlight some of the work that's been going on that's resulting in this, this request today, round about access to records for children, and particularly access for children who have been care experienced, often now adults. So in my role as data protection officer, I kind of keep an eye on all requests that are coming in under data protection. We get a large number of requests for people to access records across all areas of the council, but the real area we struggle in is particularly social work, children's social work. And I think that's because often these are children who are maybe not known to us for some time, so there's nobody directly working with those adults anymore. So we're having to go back and find records. The records can be of substantial size, and it can take a long time to go through them and to provide records to children. So the background I've laid out in section 4, and this is the real drivers, I think, as to why this is coming to a bit of a crisis area for us at the moment. The Scottish Child Abuse Inquiry, as you'll know, was set up quite a number of years ago. It's still going on. It will be going on for some years to come. At the moment, they're looking at a particular case study round about children who'd been placed in foster care. And myself and Vivian Thompson, the service manager at the time, worked closely on a response to the inquiry on that, and there's hearings coming up lately. But as we've seen the inquiry progress, we've seen more requests coming in for records. So we get some directly from the inquiry, but also from children, adults now who have been placed in care settings by the council or our predecessors. Kind of linked to the Child Abuse Inquiry, as you'll know, the Scottish Parliament introduced the Redress for Survivors Act in 2021. And this redress scheme opened just at the end of last year, just in December, run by the Scottish Government, along with an independent organisation, Redress Scotland. And it's really targeted at trying to provide tangible recognition to the harm that some children did experience in care settings. And it's really to try and give people a quick redress rather than have to go through court action, which can add to the trauma. So I've got information there in paragraphs 4.4 through to 4.6 just about the redress scheme. But again, the introduction of the redress scheme has seen an increase in requests coming through for access to care records. So generally coming from the children themselves, first of all, and then we get requests from Redress Scotland just to verify that those are records from us. And then the other real driver is the promise. So you will all know about the promise and the findings of the care review. There was a particular recommendation round about individuals who access care records being properly supported through that process. So in tandem with that recommendation, there is a group looking at a kind of gold standard for access to care records. So very much trying to support people through the process, not just leaving them to send in requests for records and then hear nothing. But to really keep them advised throughout the process, to try to work as much as possible to be able to give people their records in a real meaningful form. So not really heavily redacted, or if they have to be redacted, kind of blanked out to explain why that is. And that's what we're trying to uphold our commitments given in the promise more generally, but this report's focused very much on that finding round about care records. So I've set out in section 5 of the report some of the current processes and the challenges around that at the moment. So we don't have a kind of centralised team to deal with these kind of requests at the moment. It's left to each service. I think that necessarily results in delays, and that certainly the pandemic hasn't helped, because for 2 years, I suppose, frontline workers have been delivering frontline services in really acute circumstances. So things like providing records falls somewhat down the to-do list. The other thing is when people are presented with the files, these can be files 5, 6, 7 volumes of records. So it's a very intensive process to go through the records and work out what can be provided. Often the records contain information about child protection processes or time in care. And it can be distressing, I think, as much for the person going through the file as well to do that. And because there's just really a lack of support with that, and admin support, I think in line with many councils, we've been struggling in the subject access area. Some councils have set up bespoke teams to deal with this on a much wider level, and also dealing with child abuse inquiry work. And I've talked to a few of those councils and had some really useful insight for them about how they've dealt with this. So our proposal and the work around this has been done working really closely with Children's Social Work and Chief Social Work Officer, is that within my team, we would like to introduce 2 permanent members of staff, and they would be managed from within my team. That team would act as that single point of contact for any requests that came in for children's social work. They would work more proactively. I mean, we've already started doing some of this, but kind of without the resource, so we're struggling a bit. But trying to contact requesters when we get requests in, just to try and find out a bit more about what they want, try and manage their expectations around about timescales. The team would find out if we have got records within social work. We've got paper records, we've got electronic records, we've got old records, we've got records of amazing old volume of the Borough of Falkirk Register of Children in Care that we can go through as well to find records of children that may be known to us. And before providing those records as well, the team would make sure that they were appropriately prepared and redacted, and that also, I think really importantly, support would be offered at the time the records were provided. And that might not necessarily come from this particular team, but signposting people to support within social work or elsewhere. Really keen that these posts are permanent posts, and on the basis this is an area, I think, as I say, it's an issue we've had for some time. It's not going to go away. There's plenty of work that needs to be done, and I would hope that if we do manage to get through the backlog, there's other areas of the council that equally could be supported with these kind of requests. So there's been some consultation internally. Externally, I've spoken to some other councils, and in relation to people accessing their records, there's a lot of consultation going on with the work that Social Work Scotland subgroups doing on access to care records. So really trying to recognise how people want to access this service. There has been a budget found. I've set that out in the implication section. There will be resource required, not just to recruit to the 2 permanent posts, but just some more input from myself and my team, and we'll need some social work support just to support the process as well. I think if we do this, we face, well, we certainly face risks for me as data protection officer in responding to timescales on these, which are very tight. But the risks as well is that we're failing requesters who really do need access to their records. So I very much hope that you support this report and look to approve the creation of 2 new permanent posts. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Wendy. I'll go to Councillor Colley.
Thanks. I'll keep this really brief, and this is something that I've discussed with Sarah Lacey around this requirement. I think it's self-evident that this is these are posts that are required. The information that requesters are looking for is very complex, as Wendy has set out. We also need to ensure that we fulfil our commitment, the commitments to individuals who need this access to their records, be that for the around the child abuse inquiry, around the financial redress scheme, or to fulfil our commitment to the promise. I think that it does need that dedicated resource. It does need that permanent dedicated resource. Like, as Wendy says, this is something that is not a short-term piece of work. I suppose alongside that, you have access around children's social work records, but moving forward around individuals seeking access around adult social work requests might be a similar requirement for very detailed work involved in going through those records. So I very much hope that the members of the committee will support that, and I'm happy to propose the report.
Thank you, Fiona. I've got Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Convener. I'll be brief. I just wanted to say thank you to the team for the report. I think it's very comprehensive, and I'm very pleased to second the recommendations. The report clearly outlines that these posts are not a nice to have; they're essential. The service itself, the requesters need the support. It's providing a bridge between third parties and social work services, and I think that we wholeheartedly need to get behind this this report and ensure this team becomes a reality, because it's going to be a long-term service. It's going to be beneficial to everyone as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. We've got a number of hands up, so I'm going to take the same approach as I did in the last item. I'll take three contributors, and then I'll go back to Wendy and ask people to be fairly succinct in their comments and any questions. So I've got Michael Rollo, Robert Bissett and Alan Nimmo.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Wendy. That was a great report. You did a great job. You say you never come to this committee. I think you could come any time and give a report like that. It was very well presented, and I think it makes a lot of sense, and I would be very happy to support that. I hope it's brief enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Councillor Bissett.
I think Pastor Rollo must have read my mind. I think that was an excellent report by Wendy, and to come back anytime. Just to say, we will support these two posts. I think it's essential. I just wanted to ask the question about, will these two posts specifically be for SARS, or will there be some flexibility in the job description to do other work? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bissett. Councillor Nimmo.
Yep, thanks, Convener. Just a quick question. I'm just wondering, how will these posts be advertised? And obviously, if the applicants are internal, will we be looking at backfilling posts that are needing to be filled as well? Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Wendy.
Yeah, thank you for your supportive comments all. Just in relation to that, the new jobs are going through the grading process. There's a grading group tomorrow, and I have kept the job description fairly general to refer to information requests and other matters relating to I suppose the inquiry, because having spoken to other councils, the people they have got to do these jobs generally will pick up other things like help with requests that come in from the inquiry to reduce records as well, or help with FOI requests that might come in, not just restricted to ones to do with the inquiry, but certainly I would hope that if this model works, the job descriptions are wide enough that we can widen out the role, so that certainly the first couple of years the priority is going to be on let's get through the subject access requests. And in relation to Councillor Nimmell's question around about advertising, my intention would be to advertise externally. We really need, I mean, we have got some great people in the council, obviously, but you know, having the opportunity to advertise these permanent posts at a decent grade, we would hope that we would get really good applicants. And that's not to say we may not get internal applicants, and if we do, whether they're backfilled or not, we'll just have to face that issue as it when arises. But there is kind of a pot of money that has been found by finance to at least pay for the cost of these posts going forward.
Thanks, Wendy.
Okay, thank you for that, Wendy, and it was nice to see you at our committee. I think this is going to be a growing area over the next few years, and we do have to resource it. It's a very sensitive area, and it's a particular specialist area of work, and I know that the work that has to be done in order to actually engage with the individuals seeking the information, to know what it is they're actually wanting and what outcome they would expect from that as well. So I think it's going to be essential going forward. But thank you very much, and can I ask the committee to agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, item 8 is our standard report, early learning and childcare 1140 expansion update plans. It's kind of grown arms and legs, but there's a lot of good work going on in this area as well. But I've got Gary who will be doing his usual spot on the agenda today.
Thanks, Convener, and arms and legs may be relevant because this indeed is the 27th early years update report we've brought before this committee. The purposes of the report are outlined in section 1. There's 3 recommendations before the executive today. They're outlined in section 2. There's a reference to climate change implications, and these reports will try to support it where they can in future reports. There's some background information that really confirms that we're hoping that the availability of the outstanding infrastructure projects will become on stream between Easter and summer of this year. Turning now to section 5.1, it confirms that at the time of writing the report, Glendevin ELCC at Madison was expected to open after Easter holidays. That is still the case. I was on site this morning, and there is a delay in concrete being delivered to the site to finish some of the external landscaping works, but we're still confident that after the Easter, the site will be handed over and will be open. It then confirms there's 4 projects that are remaining, all of which are currently in their final stages, and they're outlined in Appendix 1. I would just advise the executive that some of the challenges we've had on the sites Inchlear, Woodburn and Carnshaw are really around the deliverability of the switchgear, which is an important electrical piece of kit that's required. Once it's delivered to site, it allows meter installation to be done on site in terms of our own meterage, and also, probably more importantly, allows connection to the electrical substation, and for that we require input from Scottish Power. So all these challenges have been faced, mainly because the delivery kit is coming from Europe. I think in section 5.2, I think it was Councillor Kerr that asked some relevant questions about some statistical information. So probably fortuitous, we submitted a return to the improvement service, which we do regularly on the 31st of January. So by way of information, I've extracted some of the key parts of that information and I've outlined it in section 5.2. Section 5.3 raises, and I've mentioned this to the executive before, some of the real challenges that we are facing, and I would remind members that the government increased the eligibility cohort and criteria for families for the eligible 2-year-olds probably over the last 6 to 9 months. That's resulted in quite a significant increase in demand, as you would expect, given the current economic situation that we're in, from families that meet that new criteria. So we've now got 246 eligible 2-year-olds that are currently in our system. We have currently 245 places in our establishments, which is why it's important that we also liaise with the PVI sector to make sure that we bridge that gap. Members may recall we've also taken some investment to increase capacity in some of our establishments reported previously to meet that demand. There's no sign just now that that demand from eligible 2s is slowing down, so we just need to be mindful that given it is a statutory demand, there will be a cost push pressure on us to make sure we meet that demand, and that may mean, as I've said to members in the committee before, that we may have to effectively use some of our non-statutory capacity to meet that growing demand for the statutory eligible 2-year-olds. In terms of just a bit of information, the section 5.4, it confirms that there is a national survey led by the government and COSLA and the Improvement Service around how the Scotland assesses sustainable rates. This will not give us an overall Scottish sustainable rate. What it will do is it will give information to each of the 32 local authorities around information that's relevant to their own area, and it will allow local authorities to assess that information and how they assess and set their rates going forward. That exercise is ongoing just now, so I expect to be able to report at a future meeting on the outcome of that national exercise. Section 5.5 is some good news for the local economy. The Scottish Government introduced a childcare sector Omicron Impact Fund, hopefully got that right, 9.8 million. Falkirk's share of that, and it's by way of grant payments that are made to all of our registered daycare childcare providers. It excludes the childminders where they have 10 or less registered places, because they have a separate scheme linked directly with the government. In terms of Falkirk allocation, about £123,000 is allocated for grants that are paid direct to our daycare providers, and the 6th level of grants, it really is based on the registered capacity they've got with the Care Inspectorate, £950 to £4,500. I'm pleased to say the scheme finished. It was only open for a period of just about 2 weeks. It finished on the 17th of March, and all of our daycare providers that we would have expected to apply have applied, and we expect to be processing the payments to them at some point in the early part of next week. In terms of the consultation, whilst the consultation just finished in section 5.6 on the 21st of March, I'm really delighted to report that the response rate has been absolutely overwhelming. Between 700 and 750 responses have been received to date, and officers are currently working on assessing that. At the current moment, you'll probably recall, for those who've been at the committee for a long time, at this current moment, officers' their attention are drawn to dealing with admissions, to get the admissions and allocations out for August of this year. The admissions process closed at the end of February. So we're doing that at the same time, but hopefully in a future report we'll give you a lot more information on the findings of the survey itself. In terms of section 5.7, for the very reasons outlined for the previous ones, we are looking at, we're still working on that with our RIC colleagues, and the outcome of that will again be brought to a future meeting. In section 5.8, as reported in the Council Budget Report at the 2nd of March, the Scottish Government had conducted a redetermination of our overall ELCC funding. This was based on the initial funding going back to 2015-16, was basically on the National Register of Scotland projected birth rates at that particular point in time. When you look at the birth rates that were projected then for Falkirk and Scotland and where they are now is a lot less overall than where they were projected, and the funding was provided on the basis of the projections at the time. So what's happened is the Scottish Government have done a redetermination based on probably more accurately reflecting the funding based on the number of children that are in our ELC settings, and also that means that councils where the numbers have been less than the projection that the NRS did back in 2015-16 having to take a consequential reduction in the ring fence funding. And that indeed is where Falkirk fits. The current funding has been reduced by 1.7 million. And whilst it is ring fenced for 22-23, officers are currently looking at ways that we can reduce our expenditure to bring it in line. What I would say, convener, and to reassure members, is that the current budget shows a healthy position. At the moment, we are expecting an underspend in this year. So it might well be that a lot of this is just realignment, some of the monies that we've got that we've not spent going forward. But we are looking at it, and we will bring options to this executive at a future meeting to give information on where we propose to make some of these reductions. That work is ongoing. In terms of the Section 7, the financial implications, as I said just in the preamble to the previous comments, projected underspending revenue is 1.8 million for this year, and the capital position is outlined in Section 7.2. I would advise members at the time of writing the report, which was around the 18th of February, the capital spend was about 6.5 million. As of the 17th of March, the latest report is up to 6.6 million. Nonetheless, the additional projects, when they come on stream, will bring that capital spend to fruition. And we're still expecting a balance of contingency around the £200,000 mark, which probably emphasises the way that we've conducted prudence as we've been conducting this project from start to finish. The risks are the same as the last time, convener, and in interest of brevity, and I'm conscious of time, I'll stop there and I'll invite any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Gary. Adana? Adana, you're on mute.
There you go. Thanks, convener, and thanks very much, Gary. I'd love to be sitting here this morning saying, yay, every project is complete and we've done it, and let's get on with bringing on our children now. But sadly to say, and with the obvious, Brexit, shortage of supplies, and the pressures of COVID, I can't see that. But I am confident in Gary and his whole team that he will continue to push to get the last of these projects over the line in the very near future. And thanks for that. I'm hoping, in the very near future, that every single child that's eligible for our service will be in place, and fantastic facilities and a robust team within every one of our early learning services, taking our children forward and giving them the best start in life, because that's what this has all been about. I'd also just like to say, last meeting of this 5-year term, and I want to say it's been an absolute honour and a privilege to be part of the expansion of the early years. As everyone knows, because I've mentioned it hundreds and one times in every single report that's been mentioned, that's where my expertise did lie. And it's just fantastic to see the early years service come from old day nurseries that were built in war times, using newspaper for children painting on, to the fantastic service that we've got now. So I certainly want to thank everyone within that service and appreciate the staff that are putting the work in and are continuing to put the work in. I don't know if other elected members will be aware that the different pressures that are still on us during this COVID pandemic period, and our staff within the early years in particular have worked tirelessly right through that, often putting themselves and their own families' health second to those that really need their support. So I can't say thanks enough really to everyone within that service going forward, and I'm really looking forward to yet again getting out and about to experience some of the great work that's going on. Thanks again. Oh, and it was brilliant to see every time I'm up the woods with my dog, the groups from our woodland nursery out there, taking over the woods like we ninjas. That's brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Adana, and I have a great pleasure in seconding the report today. I think that there's a huge amount of investment has gone into our early years, and we just see from what started off as a very buildings based project into something that has transformed our early years provision for our young people across, and I really look forward to seeing that actually escalate through the schools and see the benefits of that actually coming to fruition, and just enabling our young people to have all the the opportunities that they should have and be able to achieve everything they want to be, and in doing that we lift their aspirations so that they can be anything they want to be, and indeed identifying role models so that they can work towards that. But a huge amount of work is going in. Thank you to all the staff for the work that they've done. Thank you to Gary in particular for taking on all of those projects. Normally we don't do as many projects all at the one time, but all of those projects, and at a time where it's been very pressured throughout COVID as well, and delivering on them, and look forward to the summertime when we do get that cohort complete, and hopefully in the new council we'll be able to start to get out and about and visit some of them. And again, I look forward to visiting the outdoor nursery and seeing more of that happening. I've got a couple of hands up. I'll take Councillor Bissett and Councillor Nimmo, and then I'll come back to officers for any comments or responses.
Thanks, Convener. As usual, we're all fully supportive of this project, and I'd like to thank Gary and his team for delivering it and getting to this point, given the hardships that we've faced. I'd just like to ask him a couple of questions. 5.1, outstanding projects. My question is, have all of the currently outstanding projects been included in the current admissions allocations that are underway for August? That's my first one.
Okay, Gary, just in the interest of time, I'm going to take all the comments from members and then I'll come back to you. So if you've got more questions, Councillor Bissett, if you could just maybe give them just now, and I'll take Councillor Nimmo and Councillor Kerr and then go back to Gary.
Okay, I hope Gary's taking notes.
I'm sure he will be.
5.4, National Survey on Sustainable Rates. Do you know when the results of the survey will be received? And I just got a point I'd like to raise around the Scottish Milk and Healthy Snacks scheme. I know there was a recent judicial review, so I wondered if there's been a recent development in the national position regarding local serving rates. So I wonder if you could provide an update on this, and can you tell me how that affects Falkirk childcare providers? And my final question is around how we measure effectiveness of the ELCs. I think I mentioned this before. Clearly, we're trying to give the wee people a good start in life. So how do we measure that we're actually achieving that? Thank you, Convener.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Alan?
Yeah, thanks, Convener. I agree totally with Councillor Bissett's comments here. I think Gary and his team have managed these projects fantastically. And Gary, if you could pass on the comments to your team in that respect. I do have concerns when I hear that budgets are being cut by 1.7 million, irrespective of whether you're able to manage the situation or not, Gary. It still raises concerns. You said regarding the ring-fenced funding as well that that's possibly going to come to an end for 23-24. Has that yet been confirmed? And how is that going to impact on the running costs in relation to this service? Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Nimmo. Councillor Kerr?
Thanks, Convener. I'll be brief. A couple of questions for Gary, and I'd just like to thank Gary for this report and the previous 26. As there are important reports, as this is a massive project that has been done by Gary and his team for the council. And as usual, Gary has came for each report and gave us an update that we've been looking for, and that when we've been asking for more questions, he's came the next meeting, gave the answers, and kept on giving it. Two questions, well, probably three quick questions. Regarding the three that's no finished, Gary, and it's I understand regarding the switch position. Realistically, are these three going to be ready for after the summer? I know we say it's June, but they'll be ready for the school starting back up in summertime, after the summer recess. That's the first one. And the eligible 2-year-olds that we've got were nearly at capacity or at capacity. What plans have we got if it goes above it? And my last question is on the appendix 1. The rest of the buildings that's been done have had challenges, but West Quarter Primary School, I've got a lot of friends whose family go to that school. Has got to be an extremely challenging site to try and extend the school and bring a new early years campus there. What plans have we got for that? Are there any plans as yet? Thanks, Convener.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Kate, Gary?
Okay, thanks, Convener, and hopefully I'm glad to see my pen didn't run out of ink when I was writing those questions down. Anyway, in the order that were raised in terms of Councillor Bissett's question, which were actually really very pertinent, actually, the last one. Outstanding projects, yes, all the allocations that we're doing just now will assume, and it ties also in with the question Councillor Kerr asked, that all of these properties will be up and running for after the summer, if not before. So our allocations just now for the missions for August 22 are including all the new sites in them. In terms of the national survey on sustainable rates, when we will know the results, we're hoping to know the results probably in May. So at the next executive committee, we'll be given an update on the findings from that. Councillor Bissett also raised a really interesting question about the Scottish Milk Healthy Snack Scheme. And to be honest with you, I probably was remiss of me. I should have actually mentioned it verbally. I couldn't have written it in the report because this only went to COSLA on Friday, but Councillor Bissett has picked up the outcome of the judicial review. I'm very pleased to say, Convener and members of the executive, that members may recall Falkirk's current local serving rate is 35.4 pence, which is the rate that covers the milk and some healthy snack across all the establishments, including our own. As a result of the national judicial review that took place, they're setting one national rate for Scotland, and it's 58.2 pence. So I'll save people's calculators, but it roughly is a 64% increase in it, and that is good for Falkirk, for our own establishments, and also all the establishments we pay. So we're just waiting for the details for that to permeate through. COSLA agreed on Friday, and I'll reflect on it in the next update that I bring to the executive. But it's good news, and once we get it, that money will be flowing, excuse the pun for milk, will be flowing out to the establishments in the near future. And I think the reference to our wee people and their establishments will benefit from that, which is good news. Councillor Nimmo raised a couple of things about some of the effectiveness in terms of how we look at it and assess the wee people. A couple of things here. We're doing a survey just now, which once we get the results back from the current parent survey, over 700 parents have responded to it. We're going to tweak, and I've said it previously, but we intend to do a post-occupancy review. We're not really finished the project yet, but we're going to do quite a significant post-occupancy review that will not just look at the infrastructure and the buildings and the way we've done things and how we've spent money in applying best value principles. It'll look at the effect it's had on families and our wee people and our staff. And we'll be liaising with various people to make sure we get that connectivity right. as Councillor McHugh alluded to earlier on, her expertise is in that area, so we'll be looking for people that have got the expertise to make sure we get it right going forward. So probably watch this space. The concerns that Councillor Nimmo raised about the 1.7 million of cut, no one likes a cut in the budgets. However, we'll have to deal with it, and officers are currently looking at Councillor Nimmo, so we expect to come back to the next report with some options around it. However, the saving grace, as I said earlier on, is that we don't have to do things in a big bang method, because we will have significant carry forward that will allow us to roll that forward into the next financial year. In terms of the question about ring fencing for 23-24, it's not been confirmed officially as yet. The indications are that the ring fence funding will stop at the end of the 22-23 financial year, as I've reported before. However, it isn't definitive going forward. We'll wait and see what happens. We'll probably hear that probably later in probably October, November. It'll be confirmed when we do the fiscal projections for the following year. In terms of Councillor Kerr's questions, 3 projects being ready. We are planning, Councillor Kerr, once effectively if the switchgear gets installed, the meters get installed, and Scottish Power align their support to getting all the connectivity to the substation and the main networks, there's probably only 2 weeks of work, mainly around some of the internal decoration and finishings that are required. So if we can get all this connected in the next week or so, then we should have these facilities being available at probably towards the end of May or the start of June, which means that there is no risk for them not being available for occupancy over the summer. Indeed, if we can get them occupied before the summer to give our wee people that experience of these settings, which are tremendous, then we will certainly do so. And all officers are pushing very hard with development services and our corporate teams to try to get it over the line. The question around the eligible TUSIT capacity, how do we sort it? I mentioned earlier on that we're liaising with the PVI sector. They're an important part to play in it. We've got to make sure that the PVI sector play their part in stepping up as well. And also part of our capacity for non-statutory provision, we need to look at how we can realign it. And we're also looking at a number of ways that we can maybe make better use of space within some of the facilities to try to increase capacity going forward. So watch this space. It is something we're focusing on, and it'll be no doubt the subject of future reports going forward. The question Councillor Kerr raised about the West Quarter site is challenging. It is a challenging site, absolutely. Councillor Kerr would hopefully be reassured to say that within the previous extension that we built to West Quarter, shown Maze probably about 12-13 years ago, there was an element of the site that was earmarked for future expansion, which would give an up and down classroom provision. So we're looking at that, and at the same time we're looking at that extension to the school. We're looking at how we can actually restructure the school maybe internally to meet with the ongoing needs of the early years provision going forward. But better reassurance, there is an area on site, which is a tight site, already been earmarked for that expansion. So hopefully, if I've got it all right, that answers hopefully the questions that were raised, Convener.
Thank you, Gary. I noticed Councillor McHugh's got her hand up, so I'm just going to maybe go to Councillor McHugh and ask her to wind up for this item.
Yep, thanks, Convener. That was entirely what I was going to do. And thanks for Gary for answering all those questions. As the elected members will be aware, a lot of these questions have been discussed right throughout the reporting back that we've had throughout the last few years. What I did want to highlight just in my summing up is the ensuring effectiveness of the extension of our service. I really wanted to highlight the fact that we've got a professional early years service. We've got qualified professionals who have always gathered information and have always ensured that what they do and everything that they do, whether it's childcare or education within the service, is gathering information to increase attainment right across the district. And that has not changed. Our staff work incredibly hard to ensure that information is gathered to bring our children on so they're well equipped moving up the school and into their careers. So again, thanks for all that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor McHugh. Can we agree the report?
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our final item this morning, which is the SQ attainment and destinations of Falkirk School leavers. And I think Mr. Neil, are you going to take this one?
Thank you, Convener. The report's going to be presented by Rona G. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Rona. Rona, I think you're still on mute.
It's the first of today, probably the first of many. Thank you, Convener. I'm really pleased to bring this report to you, and I'm also pleased to introduce you all to one of the colleagues from our team who plays a fundamental and key role in the interrogation and collation of our data and work with schools. So Kimberly, I wonder if you could put your camera on and give everybody a wave. Kimberly Robinson is our data coach. This is a post that came into fruition a couple of years ago now and is funded by the Forth Valley and West Lothian Regional Collaborative. And I have to say, of all the posts, this is the one that I think is making the most impact in Falkirk Council schools. So Kimberly works very closely with our primary and secondary teams to gather, analyse and interrogate attainment and achievement data, and then to work out how we target support and make improvements from that. So she does an invaluable job and has been key to the interrogation of data for this report. So welcome, Kimberly. And Kimberly is also here to help with any technical analysis questions that you may ask me that I might not be quite as well placed to answer as she is. So as said, really pleased to bring this report to you. I'll take you through it with the caveat, of course, which I know you know, that this was achieved under the most exceptional of circumstances, the most difficult of circumstances. But nevertheless, this is a positive report. You'll see from section 2, we have recommendations for you to note the content and to request that we keep engaging with our schools to track and monitor and plan the leaver destinations. I won't take you through every section blow by blow. I'm conscious of time and it would take us all day to go through each table individually, but I'll try and highlight and provide you with some interesting additions on the way through in terms of context. So section 4 is giving you information around about the age groups and the ways that we measure leaver destinations. It summarises how well we assess what pupils have done and what we use to see how well they've done at their point of exit from school. Now, as you know, that can be 4th, 5th or 6th year. Section 4 also carries on to see the links between our planning and our work and the aspirations of the corporate plan. And just underneath communities, to pick up on a couple of comments that have been made about our weest people. We're recognising that the pathway to positive destination starts for our weest people when they enter our nurseries. For those of you who are familiar with the career standards in education, they start at age 3. And our curriculum pathways start developing the skills and attributes that our young people will need to move on from school into the world of work or further education wherever we can. So it's just to draw attention to the fact that we think about this from the minute they enter school, and those destinations are the responsibility of the whole service and at all stages of transition. This section then goes on to say that these main priorities of raising attainment for every child, closing the poverty-related attainment gap and improving destinations for Falkirk young people are part of our current Education Division improvement priorities. They have been since 2019 and they will remain. They may not be the huge overarching priorities for this year's service plan, but they will be in the subsets because they are never going to be anything other than our priority for all of our children. Down to 4.6, it gives a bit of background here about the changes to the SQA level of assessments over the last 2 years. You'll be familiar that we had 1 year of an alternative certification model. We're moving back this year to exams with some caveats and changes to that. It's our ambition, and it has been, to do the very best we can for every young person in Falkirk, and that has been a real achievement of our secondary teams, particularly in the last 2 years. At this point, I would like to commend our service for the collegiality and leadership of our secondary colleagues, particularly of our secondary head teachers who led their staff teams at all levels through the most unpredictable and uncertain of times. We're currently preparing for the next iteration of SQA exams, and schools are working very hard to make sure that all of our young people entering the exam system for the first time are getting the best support that they can, the best study support that they can, and the best mentoring in school that they can to cope with these exams the best that they can. Moving on to 4.8. This is talking about pathways. And what's really important to note here is how hard we are all working to make sure that children have choice, that they're able to make choices as they move through school, to take a pathway of qualification and learning that will lead them to the destinations they would like to have. In section 5, this takes you through how we consider our performance against the national virtual comparator, how we compare our performance to ourselves against our local regional improvement collaborative colleagues, and that's across Stirling, Clackmannanshire and West Lothian. And it explains how the virtual comparator is made up. This is schools from other local authorities nationally who've got similar characteristics to the pupils in our schools, and is based on their gender and additional support needs as ours are. What I have omitted in section 5.2 is to explain what SIMD is, and I'm sure you do know, but for those who are not familiar, it stands for the Scottish Index of Multiple Deprivation, because some parts of this paper look specifically at the quintiles within this. For sections 5.3 to 5.20, I am going to try and summarise the content of all of these different tables for you in a series of points of note for Falkirk. So the points of note for this year's Leavers Destination list starting now, 95.4% of pupils have positive destinations. That's the highest we've had, and it's 3% higher than last year. 44.6% of our pupils have moved on to higher education. Again, one of our highest results yet, and 4.1% higher than last year. 38.9% of our school leavers gained at least a level 5 vocational qualification, and that places us third highest in Scotland. 17 of our school leavers, which is 1% of the population, gained a level 7 vocational qualification, and that puts us highest in Scotland. 79.8% of Falkirk's most deprived school leavers in SIMD quintile 1 gained at least a level 5 award, and that ranks us 7th in Scotland. 46.9% of Falkirk's most deprived school leavers, again SIMD quintile 1, gained at least a level 6 award, and that ranks us 13 in Scotland. And 14.9% of Falkirk's most deprived school leavers, quintile 1, gained a level 7 award, and that ranks us 7th. So that just gives you a flavour of what the tables in detail in that section are providing you information of. In section 5.21, we move on to talk about the poverty-related attainment gap. This section will give you a bit of information about some of the reasons for the differences in attainment between the quintiles. It explains how this is marked between the different levels, so we have information for those in the lowest quintile, SIMD 1, 2, which is our most deprived, our middle quintile, and our least deprived areas, which is quintiles 9 and 10. This also talks about tariff points. For those of you who are not steeped in secondary attainment language, tariff points are easily explained. There's a difference between each level, and all children accrue these as they go through their qualifications. So if you were to achieve a level A at level 5, that would give you 84 tariff points. If you were to achieve A at level 6, you'd have 204 tariff points. And if you were to achieve A at level 7, you'd have 480. So that's a small illustration of the differences between each level. If you look at the first graph at 5.22, this is an illustrative way of showing you that for our schools, Falkirk pupils accrue the same or more tariff points than the national average in each of the SIMD deciles. I'm moving on now down to 5.23 and 5.24. In all of the poverty-related attainment gap work that we're doing, again, this starts in our early years, goes all the way through our BGE, and works straight into our secondary colleagues. Councillor McHugh's comment resonated with me shortly ago, taking time to get it right. We are currently evaluating the work that's going on in our schools. We're currently evaluating with all of our school times, primary and secondary, the impact on our pupils of all ages of the pandemic. We're using this time to assess what we can, to reset, to prioritise our resources and support, and to be in the best possible position for the start of 22-23. We are not underestimating in any way the impact that the last 2 years will have had of learners at all stages. So sections 5.25 through to 5.27, they're talking about the processes we have for tracking and monitoring. Of note here, I'd like to share with you that we are really pleased with the developments over the last few years of achieving a very consistent approach to tracking and monitoring the progress of our children across a broad general education. And we're now about to start piloting this tracking approach into S1 so that we have a seamless and flowing tracking and monitoring system straight into secondary school. We're going to have a huge focus this year and have had a huge focus on transitions at all stages, but with a particular focus on those young people moving through from primary 6 right through to S2, again taking account of the disruption to learning of the last couple of years. As it says in this section in 5.25, we are looking here at significantly disrupted periods of learning. So it's our job now to make sure that we put the best supports in place and have the best knowledge we have of those young children entering the system. Sections 5.27 through to 5.32 provide you with detail of the different deciles within the SIMD index and the poverty-related gap. I won't talk you through them, but if you have any technical comments at the end, then Kimberly and I are here to answer them for you. Moving through to 5.41. Vocational qualifications is something that Falkirk schools have worked extremely hard on with their partners over the last few years. We're particularly proud, I'm particularly proud, of the work that all of our schools have done in increasing the opportunities for our young people. We have primary schools now who are looking to give their young people accredited courses and qualifications. And our ambition, of course, is to have a breadth of experiences to help children and young people to be whatever they want to be, as somebody mentioned a little while ago, and making sure that our curriculums are wide enough, tailored enough, and specific enough and relevant enough for children to be able to make good choices all the way through their school career. And that again starts in our early learning centres. So in conclusion, our commitment and our ambition for our young people is unwavering. Our support for our schools and our prime focus in moving forward is addressing this long-lasting impact, but making sure that our aspirations and ambitions remain just the same. And we hope to bring back another report to you next year, the continuing progress and achievement. Thank you.
Thank you, Rona. Councillor McHugh.
Thanks, convener. And thank you very much, Rona, for a very well presented report with excellent explanation for everyone in this meeting. I'd also like to thank Robert Naylor, our Director of Children's Services, and well done to everybody that through this incredibly difficult time, we've pulled out the stops, we've supported our families and our young people, and we've achieved fantastic records. I'm so privileged to be part of all that. It has been an incredible emotional time, you know, and to see our children coming through that and gaining qualifications and closing the poverty attainment gap and supporting each other is just incredible, and it shows you that's what Falkirk's all about. You know, our children's services is really a flagship of what Falkirk and the people within Falkirk should be and are all about, and I appreciate that. So I'm not going to say anything else because I think the report says it all for us, and I think Rona has covered it really well. I'd just like to move this report, and thanks again.
Thank you, Councillor McHugh. Councillor Murtagh.
Thanks, convener and Adana. I'd like to echo Adana's comments and also to thank Kimberly, as was said in the report, that it's really valuable, you know, the pulling together of these statistics to enable us to know what's going on and to target is really important work, and I think that's, you know, high praise from what Rona was saying also, and appreciated by the committee completely. I'm not going to say too much. I know we're very short on time, but I think those opening remarks, Rona, about just how unprecedented the last couple of years have been, you know, are sometimes, you know, with everything else that's going on in the pandemic, it's quite easy to overlook the true impact and scale that has, you know, had on our children and on our teachers and on all the support staff within school, who've really adapted incredibly well through necessity to what was unfolding. And I think the point I like to make is how that's continuing. You know, I know we're saying we're preparing for the next exam day. I know that many of our students are already, you know, sitting their actual exams. You know, in this house, a lot of stress over the Spanish practical exams that were going on last week. I know there's music exams. There's, you know, our children, some of them have been, you know, coming to them for the first time as well, having not had the benefit of last year. But to say that, you know, that those results are demonstrated attainment. You know, they were hard fought results from all our children. They demonstrated the attainment, and they thoroughly deserve the results that they've got that are here in this report, and they should be congratulated, not only for the fact that many of them had to miss school, their teachers had to miss school, everybody pulled together to get those results, and I don't think we can underestimate their achievement and what this report actually represents, but also to say to them that we're with them with the exams that they're sitting now and are coming up to, realising the continuing unprecedented situation that they're in, and that, you know, their teachers very much have their back and are doing everything to support them, both academically but also pastorally. And I suppose as a parent, I've felt that, you know, absolute determination from their teachers to support them in their emotional health and their pastoral support to get the best out of them, recognising this is not just an academic challenge, it is also, you know, a very different situation than perhaps what they thought they were preparing for, and that continues. So thank you to all the staff doing that. And you know, I'm certainly incredibly proud of not my wee people, because they're taller than me now, for goodness sake. But I think they need to be congratulated for the results, and that's emphasised to them, because you know, you should be proud of what you've achieved. And I think everybody in the committee is certainly proud of the results that are demonstrated in this report. Thanks, convener. I won't say any more.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, I have Councillor Bissett and Councillor Nimmo, and I'll just follow the same format. If you've got questions, I'll take them all together and go back to Rona. Councillor Bissett.
Thanks, convener. I'll be brief. Just to say thanks to Robert Naylor and his team and all the teachers who are quite remarkable and have been very resilient over this period of time, not least having to adapt to timetables at short notice, and that in itself was very difficult, but they got through there. So they were very adaptive, and these set of results are remarkable, and fair play and credit to our pupils who show a certain degree of resilience as well, and have managed to get their exams done and get these results. So many thanks to the pupils and to the parents who have clearly had to work in the background with the pupils on blended learning and all sorts of things. So over a very difficult period to achieve this is really quite remarkable. So it's really just a thanks all round to everyone. Thank you, convener.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Bissett. Councillor Nimmo.
Yep, thanks, convener. I totally agree with what's just been said. I think thanks needs to go out to all our education staff. And it's not just about our teachers, it's about all the support staff and all the office staff as well, who help the whole thing to work. And even just as importantly, if not more importantly, our pupils, because they're the ones that have done fantastic during this period, during the COVID pandemic. I just have the one question, convener, and it's in relation to the exam results and the assessment criteria. I'm just wondering if there's been an impact on our school leavers leaving to go to university, if there's been any problems associated with grades and such, with it being an assessment process rather than an exam. What's happened with them gaining access to university? Thanks, convener.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Nimmo. Councillor Kerr.
Thanks, Convener. I'll be very brief. These are important figures, and they're probably the best we've had for 5 years. I've been a member of the council, and just to say that not just during the pandemic in the last couple of years, but actually at the moment, I was in one of the high schools yesterday, and they're feeling it really hard with the amount of teachers are off with COVID. So they're still facing difficulties, and to be fair, I wouldn't do their job for all the money in China. And I've got a few friends who are teachers say if it was only teaching, it'd be easy, but it's everything else that goes with it that makes it a lot harder. And I take my hat off to every one of them, and the commitment and that they show is phenomenal. So I've no questions, I just that comment. Thanks very much, Convener. And thanks, Robert and Rona.
Thank you, Councillor Kerr. Rona, you want to take the question around the exam results and the impact?
Thanks, Convener. Councillor Nimmo, there's not been any detrimental effect, and I think, like everybody else, universities and colleges had to think about how they were admitting young people, and as you saw from our results, we had more people going on to higher education than ever before. I think what has been strange about it is the experience that they've had, in terms of much of it has been remote. They haven't had that usual connection, but certainly the qualifications and criteria for getting in didn't change as such, but the routes for interviews and applications were modified to help young people as they moved through with their applications. But it hasn't been detrimental to Falkirk. In fact, we've seen an increase in the number of people going forward. So there may have been some choices for young people who would have previously maybe wanted to go into employment, but we know that the pandemic significantly affected, particularly in the first year, those young people who were under 25. So the employment market targeted that age group the worst. However, we've been really pleased to see that because of our excellent partnerships with Forth Valley College, that we've managed to provide for some of our pupils while they're still at school, that college experience of some qualifications, but certainly through our apprenticeships and our partnership with them, different pathways for children to go locally to Forth Valley College as well. In terms of the other comments that were made, I would like to just reflect on Councillor Kerr's recognition of the extreme difficulty schools are still facing because of staff absence. So you'll know that from the last few weeks, we've had quite a number of secondary schools having to go to remote learning for a few age groups wherever possible. We have targeted those age groups in S1, 2 or 3 so as not to compromise those young people going into the exam system. But I think the success of Falkirk has come about from the outstanding partnership approach of our primary and secondary head teachers, our ELC teams, because the staff shortages is right across the sector, and it has been most of this session, particularly from October onwards. And what has been remarkable and should be noted is that willingness of head teachers to galvanise their teams to support their own work, but also to step outside and go and help schools where they're short. And I commend my central team for the same efforts. We've been out and about doing all sorts of jobs in all sorts of schools. I had wellies on a few weeks ago before Christmas time in Kinneil when I was out doing playground duty. We are all in this together. And I think since the very start of this pandemic, that collective endeavour to keep the wheels in the Falkirk bus and to keep that bus going forward have been outstanding. So I would like to mention that just now. And moving forward, I would invite maybe if Charlotte and Cameron have managed to survive to the end of this, if they're still with us, some comments from them. But I think for young people, you're absolutely right. They have played such an important part in this. I don't know if any of you have been able last night or are able to go tonight to the Falkirk Schools concert. But what was standing there smacking you right in the face was the resilience and the talent and the ambition of our young people in Falkirk. And it's no different in schools. And I think as a service, our job is to put assurance where there's uncertainty. And I think uncertainty has been one of the biggest problems for our young people in the changes that have happened. in terms of their school experience, being in school, being out of school, what the exams are going to look like. And as you quite rightly said, some people are coming to the exams new to this apart from their prelims. So there has been a huge amount of uncertainty, and it's our job to put that back. It's also our job to put structure into the whole process right the way through children's careers to make sure that we can ensure confidence in moving forward. So I thank you for your comments, and I will pass on all to the workforce who are responsible for supporting our young people to achieve all of this. And maybe if Cameron and Charlotte are still with us, is there anything you would like to add to what's been said?
All I would add is it definitely has been the uncertainty that has been very difficult over the last couple of years. Like for example, my practical drama exam was on Wednesday, and I tested positive, but it was uncertain. I didn't know whether I'd actually get to sit it until the morning of the exam, whether I got my negative lateral flow or not. So it's that worry and uncertainty for everything that you just can't control at all, and it's that's just been constant. You don't know what's going to happen, whether it's going to change, and because things have changed so quickly before, it's just always anticipating, because there's nothing you can control, because it's not
your fault.
It's not your fault. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing anybody can do to control it.
Yeah, I got COVID just before the exams hit, and it's that, obviously it wasn't during my exams, but for the run up to them, obviously that's the most important bit for revising, so it was quite scary, the thought of me not being able to do as well as I wanted, obviously with that uncertainty, because I was stuck at home. I didn't have the face-to-face with my teacher, so I couldn't get that proper support that I needed. Luckily, I think I've done well, but it's obviously that uncertainty that you can't really control.
Thank you both.
Thank you, and we wish you well. I'm sure you will do well in your exams going forward. I just want to add my thanks, and particularly thanks to Councillor McHugh for her leadership and her support of the whole service going forward, and that the achievements that have been made collectively are massive for Falkirk and for our young people. To have achieved the best ever attainment, to see that attainment gap begin to close, see everybody move up in the attainment is something that is really absolutely fantastic to see. And I commend everybody involved in doing so through such difficult times, such dramatic times, and the ever-changing environment that we're in, and that we've had to learn to live with over the last couple of years. So it's an amazing achievement, and it's set the bar now, unfortunately, because we have to continue to be able to maintain that and build on that going forward. But I have confidence that with the work that has gone on over the last 5 years, that will be able to be done, and we will continue to see our young people achieve and develop and blossom, and that the service will be able to adapt to an ever-changing environment, which I think we're going to be in around education going forward. But just thanks to everybody for their input, and thanks to Councillor McHugh. Can I ask if we're happy to agree the report? Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you. That brings us to the end of today's executive, and I just want to thank all the members who are present, and those that have come and gone, including our pupil reps, parent reps and religious reps over the last 5 years for the work that they brought to the committee. They've brought a very different perspective to these meetings, and a real depth and quality to the discussions, and appreciate their input. I want to thank all the elected members for their input to the committee, the very appropriate questioning, and indeed the support to the service that we've seen, particularly over the difficult time, and indeed to all the officers for the reports, bringing them forward in again challenging circumstances, and allowing the business and the work to be able to continue to take place during the pandemic, and keeping us up to date with situations as the pandemic has affected the service going forward. So thank you everybody for your support over the last 5 years, and look forward to coming back into a new council, hopefully, and we will be able to continue the work going forward. But thanks very much, everybody.
Thanks for the chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.